Welcome to the Parsha Perspective. Each week, we will delve deep in a weekly Torah portion to find a practical and insightful way to enhance your daily life. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Rabbi Shalom Yamini, and each week we will look into the weekly Torah portion to find practical and insightful ways to enhance your daily life. This week's Parsha Perspective is in honor of our homeland, Eretz Yisroel. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu, may God protect our brave soldiers and return all the hostages from Gaza immediately. This week's Parsha Perspective is in loving memory of Edward Ben Efraim, Shlomo Ben Edward, and Yirachmiel Daniel Ben Gedalia. May their souls be uplifted and may their memories be a blessing. Before I begin, I would like to mention that the release date of this episode is Yud-Tes Kislev, celebrated and known as the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, the new year for Chassidus. On this day, the first Chabad Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad Chassidic movement, Rav Schneur Zalman of Liadi, was released from imprisonment in Tsarist Russia, a defining moment in the history of Chassidus. His liberation marked a heavenly affirmation for spreading the inner soul, the inner truth, and the secret of the Torah to the masses. Following his release from prison, the Alter Rebbe intensified his mission, writing and authoring the Tanya, the foundational text of Chabad philosophy, with its 53 chapters corresponding to the 53 days in prison. And he quoted Yaakov Avinu in last week's Torah portion. The Alter Rebbe reflected on God's kindness similar to Yaakov with profound humility, reminding us that divine blessings come with the responsibility to magnify them through action. Yud-Tes Kislev, the Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus, calls upon us to deepen our connection to the inner dimension of the Torah and spread its light and propelling us to the ultimate redemption. This week's Torah portion is Parshas Vayeishev, Path to Peace. Our Parsha begins with Yaakov Avinu settling in Hebron with his wives and 12 children. The Pasuk tells us that Yaakov loved one son more than the rest, Yosef HaTzadik, the firstborn of his wife Rachel. To show his affection, Yaakov made a unique multicolored coat for Yosef as a visible sign of his deep love, a ketonis pasam. Yosef also had many dreams which added fuel to the fire. He dreamt of his brothers bowing down to him and shared these dreams with them. Yosef HaTzadik's constant rebuking of his brothers and the unmistakable preference from their father ignited his brothers' jealousy. And this jealousy soon hardened into hatred, simmering just beneath the surface. One day when the brothers were far from home, tending to the sheep, Yaakov sent Yosef to check on their well-being. And as Yosef approached, they saw him in the distance. And the sight of him enraged his brothers, and they plotted to kill him. Reuven, the firstborn, intervened, and he urged them to avoid spilling blood and instead throw him into a nearby pit, secretly planning to return to rescue him later. When Yosef arrived, his brothers stripped him of his special coat and threw him in a pit. They deliberated further, and Yehuda suggested to sell him to a caravan of Ishmaelim, of people traveling down to Egypt. The brothers agreed and exchanged Yosef for a handful of silver coins, and the caravan eventually sold Yosef to Potiphar, Paro's chief butcher in Egypt. To cover their tracks, the brothers dipped Yosef's coat into animal blood and brought it to Yaakov, fabricating a story that a wild beast has eaten him. The news shattered Yaakov, and he tore his clothing in anguish, mourning his beloved son. And even as his sons and daughters attempted to console him, Yaakov Avinu refused to be comforted, vowing, "I will descend to the grave, mourning for my son." Meanwhile, Yosef's story took an unexpected turn. Everything he touched flourished, for God was with him. And Potiphar noticed Yosef's extraordinary success and placed him in charge of his entire household and all his business affairs. And despite being far from home and in a foreign land, in a foreign place, Yosef's faith and determination kept him on the right path forward. However, a question comes to mind. Why does our Torah portion begin by stating where Yaakov Avinu was during this pivotal moment? The Pasuk writes, "Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migurei aviv be'eretz Canaan." And Yaakov settled in the land where his father was, and his father lived in the land of Canaan. But this isn't new information. At the end of chapter Lamed Hey, the Torah already tells us that Yaakov came to his father Yitzchak in Mamre, at Kiryas Arba, which is now Hebron, where Avram and Yitzchak had lived. And if we already knew where Yaakov Avinu was, why did the Torah repeat this specific city here? And specifically at the start of the story of Yosef and his brothers. What is the Torah hinting at on this emphasis with Yaakov Avinu's place and his situation? To answer this question, we look at the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, a leading Torah scholar, philosopher, and Torah commentary, to give us an interesting explanation. And he addresses two key questions. Why does the Torah emphasize where Yaakov Avinu lived, and why does it refer to the place as the land where his father lived instead of naming the city directly? The Ramban explains that the Torah just described Esau's descendants and their many territories, detailing their tribes and their chiefs and the lands they fought and claimed for. In contrast, the focus now shifts to Yaakov Avinu and his family, demonstrating their vastly different circumstances. While Esau and his descendants took their lands through conquest and ownership, Yaakov lived as a stranger in a land of Canaan, a land promised to him but still occupied by others. Even though his father and grandfather had lived there, Yaakov's status remained one of a stranger, understanding the reality that the promise of a land has not yet been fulfilled. And this distinction points back to God's covenant with Avraham Avinu in Bereshis. The pasuk says, "Ki ger yeh zeracha be'eretz lo lahem," for your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. The Torah deliberately avoids naming the exact location, emphasizing instead the deeper reality that Yaakov Avinu was fulfilling a role set out by God's covenant, that he was to be a stranger in a land divinely designated for him, but not yet realized as his own. In honor of Yud-Tes Kislev, we will look at the Hasidic interpretation. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Schneur, gives a deep and profound explanation, and he quotes the Medrash Tanchuma, which questions why the Torah uses the word Vayeishev, which is the name of our Torah portion, which means "and he settled" rather than Vayigar, "and he lived." And this choice reflects Yaakov's deep desire for peace after many years of difficulty. The Medrash recounts Yaakov's struggles from his youth, and then challenges with his brother, and leading to his father-in-law Lavan, from the switch of his wives to the years of unfair treatment in his wages, and eventually fleeing his father-in-law to secure a future, and then wrestling with Esau's angel, and then confronting his brother after decades apart. And then the fallout from Shimon and Levi's actions in Shechem, and the pain of losing his most beloved wife Rachel during childbirth, and after so much hardship, Yaakov returns to Hebron with the hope of finally finding peace. He wants to settle with his family, live in the land promised to him, promised to his father, and promised to his grandfather, to begin fulfilling the blessings of multiplying and inheriting the land of Israel, the land of Canaan. But the Medrash tells us that God had other plans. Yaakov's journey was far from over. His greatest test was yet to come. His most beloved son Yosef was sold into slavery, and Yaakov, believing him to be dead, carried this grief and sorrow for more than 22 years. And while we know the end of the story, Yaakov had to experience that unimaginable pain and had to leave the land of Canaan to settle in Egypt. And only there did the divine presence and promise begin to take shape. Avram's descendants would become strangers in a foreign land, setting the stage for their exodus, for their redemption. The Rebbe takes this explanation a step further. He explains that Yaakov wasn't just longing for physical rest, he wanted spiritual peace. He sought a calmness, a connection to the divine, the kind of completeness only that is mirrored in the world to come, to Olam above, where the righteous bask in the presence of God. But Yaakov's work was not done, and God pushed him even further, knowing his efforts would bring even greater light into this world. The Rebbe teaches us that there are two kinds of peace. One that can be achieved in this world, and another that is only possible in the world to come. And Yaakov wanted to experience both, to find a sense of completeness in here, in this world, in this life. But God had more for him to accomplish. And it was only after reuniting with Yosef HaTzadik in Egypt, surrounded by his family, Yaakov experiences that peace that he longed for. Peace grounded in holiness, even in a land as spiritually low as Mitzrayim, as Egypt. This profound lesson from the Lubavitcher Rebbe is deeply connected with the message of Hanukkah. The flickering flames of the menorah remind us that even in the darkest moments, there is light. A single spark can dispel immense darkness, and every act of holiness can transform the world around us. It is a story of resilience, a story of hope, showing us that as long as a small flame burns, peace, tranquility, spirituality, and holiness are within reach. The flickering flames of menorah call us to continue kindling the light, step by step, until the Geula Amitis V'Hashlema, until the ultimate redemption becomes our reality. In our daily life, It is imperative that we recognize the power of starting anew each day. Every morning brings new challenges, fresh opportunities, and the chance to grow beyond what we thought is possible. Each step forward, no matter how small, builds a stronger foundation for happiness, success, and family. Each day is a gift, a chance to bring light into our lives, shaping a world filled with meaning and purpose, as we pave the path for the ultimate redemption. I will conclude with this quote. Each day brings a new opportunity to rise, to build, and to let our light push back the darkness. Have a great weekend, good Shabbos, and a happy Hanukkah. Thank you for tuning in to the Parsha Perspective. Check out our website, theparshaperspective.com. Send thoughts and comments to theparshaperspective@gmail.com. Till next time, thanks for listening.